So you know the deal with any list like this, it will change tomorrow and it will change back again in 10 years' time, but as we are living in a modern wrestling world, there's been so many pay-per-views that have never featured in a list like this, I thought we could sit down and have a little bit of recency bias and go through some of the best pay-per-views / shows that have hit our face in recent times. And forever. I mean, for ages, everyone's like, oh my gosh, WrestleMania 17 is the greatest of these. So let's find out if it makes this list. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it does. Shouldn't have said that, but just ruined the video. But here's another surprise. It is not number one. Let's get into it. 25 AEW Dynasty 2024. So let's get straight in with some recency bias to begin with, because I just thought this show was absolutely terrific, and it came during a period where some people were like, oh no, AEW was stuck in the mud. When it did get to their pay-per-views, they took a bat, and they hit a home run. Now they start off with a Carter versus Pac, and those two dudes could go out there and play chess, and somehow they would make it work. And it also gives you one of those moments where you're like, I am actually getting a Carter versus Pac, but it's not in some strange promotion I've never heard of. It's in the number 2 promotion in the United States of America. And that is awesome and deserves credit, but also they have a fantastic match. I won't lie, I've watched it a few times. Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly also have a fight, and sure, that one's a little bit for the sickos, but they do have the history together of being the bestest friends. And there you go out there too, they're like, do you like technical wrestling? We're going to show you some tech. Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm continued their feud, and they have a really good women's world title match, which did help the division. And you also get Adam Copeland, Mark Briscoe, and Eddie Kingston taking on the House of Black. And this was like a who's who, just pick your favorite wrestlers. And yes, sure, some people said this match did go a little bit too long, and that may be true. That's why it's good watching them back now. You can just stop after this, go have a cup of tea, a crumpet, and then carry on. Jewel in the crown, though, was of course Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay, and I chatted to somebody the other day that still claims this is the best match of these modern times, and you'd be hard-pressed to argue with it depending how you see sports entertainment. I mean, it is just 2 generational talents tearing up the place. I mean, it's pretty damn flipping. The reversal of the Oscar into Danielson's Psycho knee actually haunts my dreams. That's the wrong terminology, because in a good way. And if you haven't seen this, you should probably check it out, even if it isn't your style. As long as you're not one of these biased Barrys, I promise you'll find something in it. FTR versus the Young Bucks is always good because they're incapable of having a bad match, and you get the main event of Samoa Joe versus Swerve Strickland, which in many ways is a passing of the torch, because we all know that Samoa Joe is a legend. But this was the night when Swerve Strickland won the AEW World Championship. That's what the fans wanted, so everybody gets sent home happy. And also, have you seen what Swerve has done ever since? In many ways, this was his jumping off point. He has become one of the best wrestlers throughout North America and the world. Number 24, WWF In Your House Canadian Stampede 1997. So if you're into noise and you're into crowds going crazy, this is still one of the best pay-per-views of all time. And actually in mid-97, when this dropped, people were like, oh my gosh, that was absolutely brilliant. And they get to such crazy decibels, and they're just throwing themselves around the place. Sometimes you can see the cameras shaking. It's frankly ridiculous. The opener is also Triple H versus Mankind, so if you are a modern day fan, you can jump back to the late 90s and be like, I know where your careers are going to go. And even though it does go to a double count out, these two kick each other's ass, and it was also one of the first matches where all of a sudden the audience was like, wait a minute, there's something to this Hunter fellow, we should keep an eye on him. You also get Taka Michinoku versus the Great Sasuke, and again, let's do the fingers. 1, nobody ever expected to see that in the WWF. And 2, you can pretend here that maybe, just maybe, the World Wrestling Federation is about to take their cruiserweight seriously. Now they didn't, but that doesn't mean this has to be taken away from you. And if you can find the context of that period and what the WWF was doing, I promise you'll be impressed. Vader versus The Undertaker is also a big men slapping man meat match, and given that Vader did not have a good run in the World Wrestling Federation, this is one of his better matches, and they just treat it like a big powerhouse, let's run into each other, big bang boom. And sure, the Mastodon does lose, but it's still pretty damn great. When we get to our main event, when Bret Hart was able to pull off this tremendous gimmick where he was a heel in America, but a super babyface in Canada, and when him and the Hart Foundation walked to the ring, I tell you, you will feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. Is one of the greatest sights anybody could behold. It's also important to note in 1997, you didn't always get the crazy crowds that would boo the good guys and cheer the bad guys, so seeing this was totally nuts. And also, the team they were facing, Steve Austin, Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and the Legion of Doom. It sounds like some kind of fantasy fit. Stu Hart also gets involved in this, and it also helps Steve Austin climb the rails to where he was going to go. So this is another one that really has to be in your checkbook of wrestling shows you have watched. mean, what, it's almost 30 years old, and it's still flamming great. Number 23, WCW Spring Stampede 1994. So once again, we do need some context because yes, WCW was struggling at the time, and nobody was really watching any of their pay-per-views, but now we can get in our time machines and pick and choose. I tell you, this is actually a pretty flipping good show. I mean, it shocks you right away because you get Cactus Jack and Max Payne taking on the Nasty Boys, and you'd probably struggle to sell that to anybody, but I tell you, they have a wonderful brawl, and they absolutely hold nothing back. Even Dustin Rhodes versus Bunkhouse Buck is actually really compelling to watch, mostly because Dustin has gone, well, my dad, Dusty Rhodes, was pretty good at selling. I wonder if I can do that too, and by Jove, can he? Halfway through, you're worried about this man. He looks like he's in serious jeopardy. I really just think on this night, WCW remembered, oh yeah, we're meant to be good old Southern wrestling, so maybe we should provide for that audience. And you also get Steve Austin versus the Great Muta. Now listen, it ends with a stupid disqualification that nobody needed to do, but just seeing these two superstars go at it, rules. Sting versus Rick Rude is also very watchable, and while they would actually go on to do better in terms of historical context, it's important. And I want to mention Vader again, because he is just in his element as he does take on the Big Boss Man, or Boss as he was called in WCW, and we just talked about big men slapping man meat. This is essentially the template, and we do not give Ray Traylor enough praise. He is a huge human being, and yet he moves like a lightweight. Of course, the reason this pay-per-view gets the nod, though, is because it does end with Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat, and they could have probably have fought 72,999 times, and the worst you would have got was 4.25 stars to use that stupid scale. They were born for each other. If you're also a fan of this version of the Nature Boy, many do argue this was his last great performance before he did kind of move into different territories with World Championship Wrestling. But let's not worry about the fuddy-duddy stuff. Watch it from start to finish, and you will see a masterful heel, and you will see a masterful babyface, and the whole crowd is along for the ride. So it's totally amazing we did get this in 1994, because of course WCW was about to go, hey Hulk Hogan, we need your help. But once again, don't worry about all of that. Make sure you check it out. Number 22, WWF Summerslam 2002. So I remember the feedback at the time. Everybody was saying, hot damn, I think that was the best SummerSlam the WWF has ever done. I actually think these people were right. It's actually kind of mad that the WWE, as they were known at this point, didn't realize what they had here, because they were desperately searching for a new direction after the Attitude Era had died. They stumbled across it here, and then they never really went back to it. You ask me. It wasn't even from an in-ring point of view either, which was super quality, but the metrics and the numbers told you fans like this. Every single other show had dropped crazy when it came to the metrics, and while this SummerSlam had dropped 30,000 buys, believe you me, if you compared it to the other numbers around this time, 30,000 buys were nothing. Vince McMahon should have jumped on this template, and he did not. Of course, it was massively helped thanks to the return of Shawn Michaels, and this is the most terrifying match anybody had ever seen. I'm exaggerating, but he had been out for years with a bad back. He was coming back to fight Triple H in a street fight, so every single time his poor back went into a table or a ladder or a chair, you just went all oogly boogly, but that just made it so damn fun to watch. It's an underrated gem. It's also the night that Brock Lesnar was crowned as the real next big thing, because he does defeat The Rock. And this is kind of one of those things you could show to any wrestler and explain, that's how we do business, kid. Because Dwayne Johnson goes out of his way to make Brock look like the beast. That was the point. By the end of it, mission success. I mean, Lesnar had only been in the company 8 months too, and now he was the WWF champion, which no one could believe. Although secretly the highlight is still Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle. They only go 10 minutes, but it's probably the greatest 10 minutes you could ever have in your life. Unless you go into a bedroom. Shouldn't have said that. Better still, they could do this tomorrow in any promotion in the world and nobody would blink an eye. They would just go, oh, it's current wrestling. They were ahead of their time. There's also Chris Jericho versus Ric Flair, which is very much what they had a match, then I don't remember that. And you get Edge versus Eddie Guerrero. And again, those two are incapable of anything but at least decent. And sure, The Undertaker versus Test is a bit of a blip, but you can't expect a perfect card every single show. And I promise you, if you sit down and watch this one too, you will not feel like you've wasted your time. But 21, AEW Revolution 2023. So it is really hard these days to tell someone I have found the best version of a stipulation match, especially given how many bouts we do get today. But if you go watch this show, you will get an Iron Man match between Bryan Danielson and MJF. According to this bored asshole, I think it would be number one. Now, of course, the issue with this format has always been that if you are a fan, you only have to tune in for the last 5 minutes because you know that's when the big fall is coming. So what Maxwell and Brian did is say, well, how about we tell a story throughout all of this? Meaning if you do that, you're not going to understand the context. And if you do go back and watch the whole 60, it's going to blow your brain. That's what they did. I mean, there's just so many twists and turns that keep you guessing, and by the time MJF is tombstoning Bryan Danielson, you'll be having a conniption, because even here, Bryan wasn't a well man, or he wasn't 100%, so you start to worry about it. Freeman also makes sure to take constant water breaks throughout this to sell the fact he is trying to go an hour, and that tied directly into a finish because a bunch of medical personnel ran out to try and give him oxygen, and he was like, well, wait a minute, we are in overtime right now, I have a bit of a breather, when he uses the oxygen tank to smack Bryan Danielson, and he beats him to win in sudden death. I mean, it's just so genius, you have to see it to get it. Elsewhere, the House of Black versus the Elite is absolutely superb. Mostly because Kenny Omega and Malachi Black, I think, talked to each other and said, not a lot of people have seen us work on a big stage, so we go crazy. And they did. I mean, they basically do a match within a match, which is totally preposterous, and even the casket match between Christian Cage and Jack Perry is good, even though 9 times out of 10 casket matches don't make any sense. You also get super violence as well, because of course this is the first Texas Death Match between Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page, and if you then want to go watch the All In 2025 stuff and bookend these two, well, it actually delivers even more impact. It's also another one of those shows that when it was going on, people were like, oh, the TV of AEW isn't good right now. But you do not have to worry about that here, because they went to pay-per-view once more, and it's just absolutely excellent. Number 20, NXT Takeover Brooklyn. So maybe on a match-by-match basis, there have been better NXT takeovers, but there was just something special on this night, because it essentially told a large fan base, oh, you don't like what the WWE main roster is doing, you can come down here to NXT, we're going to give you exactly what you want. Of course, they're on a massive stage here as well because they've sold out the Barclays Arena in New York. And even the word at the time was a lot of people on Raw and SmackDown were like, well, why do they have so much freedom? We feel handcuffed up here. Damn it, it's not fair. The opener is totally surreal as well because it's Juice and Thunder Liger taking on Tyler Breeze. And even though this was years ago, sometimes I do stare off into the distance like, how did that happen on WWE TV? But thank Flubbins, it did. You can even call it the first opening of the Forbidden Door if you want, and you also get Baron Corbin and Samoa Joe, who just decide, shall we punch each other really hard in the face? They have a pretty good brawling type match. It also meant this entire card does have different flavors, which you always need, but yes, you then get the Sasha Banks versus Bayley, which for my money is still probably the most important WWE women's match to ever exist. I mean, to call it a masterpiece, I don't think is an exaggeration at all, because once again, you have a wonderful bad guy and a wonderful good guy, with the crowd being so desperate to see Bayley win, and Sasha Banks just being like, man, I can take all your bullets, I don't care. And the chemistry that these two have, honestly, it's never been better. They just tell the best story over an 18-minute period, and actually it wasn't even the main event, which went to Finn Balor and Kevin Owens in a ladder match. If you want to walk into my house right now and take a guess and I bet that wasn't very good, I don't think you watch wrestling, bro. It's very, 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 very excellent. It's also important because they were the foundation of what the black and gold era was. If you were a fan of the indies, you had Prince Devitt taking on Kevin Steen in the main event of a sort of WWE show. That is enough to blow your mind. This one was special. Number 19, AEW Revolution 2022. So it's the lineups that makes this damn card so fun, because you get the likes of Eddie Kingston versus Chris Jericho, where once again your hands go on your hips. You're like, how did we get him, man? And are we ever going to be able to get back home? I mean, Jericho had been a mainstay of mainstream wrestling for years, whereas Eddie was always under the radar, but thanks to AEW, they finally came together. They go full King's Road as well, as they just drop each other on their heads. If you were an AJPW fan, you'd probably be proud. Kyle O'Reilly playing Dom as him and Roderick Strong take on the Elite in the Jurassic Express is also an absolute joy. I guess these days we call it a party match. And this was the time we were also starting to tease that we were going to do the Undisputed Era versus the Elite. Now, very sadly, we never got there properly. But again, we're talking about watching these shows in isolation. You still get a bit excited about it, even if after you're done, you'll then be disappointed. There is a classic sat right in the middle of this as well, because you do get MJF versus CM Punk in that dog collar match. And if you are somebody who'd been walking around going, man, I don't like my sanitized version of wrestling, I want something that feels edgy, gritty, and hard hitting, well, you should probably go and watch this. It's disgusting in many ways, but my gosh, you're never going to be able to take your eyes off it. And the storytelling, you can argue it's both of their best work. Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson also continues that on because they are such good friends behind the scenes. And actually, there's a real sense of danger to this, because even though they don't have a mad stipulation attached, everything they do just look like it hurt. Probably because it did. You also get Hangman Adam Page versus Adam Cole in the main event, which is another of these dream matches, especially if you were into your independent wrestling. And while it is predictable and nobody actually believed there was going to be a big change here, you still get that moonsault into super kick spot. That thing will stay with you for a while. You even get Sting having a party match of his own towards the end of this, and you know the deal with Steve Borden. By this point, he was like, how do I keep up with these young pups? I'll just do crazy things all of the time. So yeah, I got no notes with this one. It's a good pay-per-view. 18 AEW Revolution 2020. So we are spamming AEW Revolution shows now, but on this particular night, you get Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega taking on the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team titles. And if you put your ear back to this year, do you know what some people say? This is the best tag team match ever. I mean, aside from the level of in-ring work, it is just the stories that these two tell, and you actually needed to do some reading or watch the show week to week, because you need to know all about all the relationships here, or what Kenny Omega was doing, and how he was treating about Hangman, and how eventually he was going to turn flipping heel. Even the opener of Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hagar is met by cheers by the crowd who were so tied in, and then you get the polar opposite to this, Darby Allin versus Sammy Guevara. So we kind of went from names you recognize from the past to two brand new names, and they absolutely tear it up. Chris Jericho versus John Moxley actually ties into that too, and it's an awesome main event. And it also let you know that things had changed. Because listen, Chris Jericho was the first AEW World Champion, which was the right call. But even on this moment, you were like, well, he hasn't had it that long. He could hold it for a little bit longer, but that wasn't the feeling in the air. Per the Lion King, everybody knew that Moxley had so much momentum, we had to do the title change. And we listened to those fans, and we got happiness on the night. Cody Rhodes versus MJF is just totally bonkers to watch now. And actually, I should point out, this was the first night where he had the neck tattoo, which did steal all the headlines away. Don't ask me, that's what happened. Chris Statlander versus Nyla Rose is also excellent when you learn that both of them had the flu, but nothing on this thing is better than Hangman and Kenny taking on the Young Bucks, and actually that is a very special match which helped AEW become the beast that it is today. I really do think that's something you should go check out, and even if all the other matches sucked, that one alone, well, it would place this show pretty high. Number 17, AEW All In 2025. Now this one could probably be higher, but I've literally only just watched it the last couple of days, so people will yell at me. But I really do think this was a tremendous show, even if it went on for 492 years. It really comes down to three matches in particular, including that Hangman Adam Page John Moxley Texas Death match, which we just talked about. But the finish of that is etched into my mind. John Moxley, for the second time, being hanged over the top rope and not selling the fact, oh no, I might lose my title, but selling the fact, I think I'm going to die here, so I do have to tap out. Well, I think it may be one of the best finishes, let's say the phrase, of modern times. Mercedes Moné versus Toni Storm for the AEW World title is just proof that we have some absolute beasts here who are only going to continue to lead that women's division for years to come. And I like Kenny Omega versus Okada. Afterwards, I saw people going, it wasn't as good as their old ones, but it was still good, damn it. They're another two. Put them in science class. Chemistry. You also genuinely think the Young Bucks versus Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay for stipulations and not titles is one of the best tag team matches I have seen, based on that style. There is a section in the middle of that where it's just you go, I go, we all go, and the timing of it, man, totally blew my brain. And admittedly, we'd seen better Casino Gauntlet matches, but having the best pay-per-view isn't about having fire every single way, it's about the ebbs and flows, and actually, I think this one does do that exactly. Even the first match is tying into the main event, because poor Samoa Joe gets taken out of the equation, because we all know the Death Riders would be flubbed if Samoa Joe was sniffing around. I do love the fact that MJF and Athena got victories there though, because it was setting AEW up for the rest of the year. And even though this show was genuinely 6 hours, when I was watching it live, it flew on by. That probably tells you there was something here. I was a big fan of it. Number 16, WrestleMania 40. This will be another one that people shout recency bias, but I disagree. I get when you put the name WrestleMania on it, people go, oh my gosh, you gotta be careful here. But I truly think this event is super duper damn good. And sure, yes, Jimmy Uso versus Jey Uso is on this pay-per-view and it's average at best, but it's nowhere near as bad as people made out, and you can do this, man, you can just skip it. I mean, it does not take away from the event overall, especially because you do get Sami Zayn versus Gunther for the IC title, and seeing Sami, of all people, stop the Ring General and his 666-day title reign, well, once again, that's warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum stuff, and the sort of thing we should be doing at WrestleMania. Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch also also totally rules, as does Bayley versus Io Sky for the women's title, where Bayley wins that belt too. That's another one. What an underrated gem. We don't talk about it enough. Rock and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins is also a right treat because one, the People's Champion had come back to the ring, but also it's just so over the top. And sure, it probably could have been cut by 5 to 10 minutes, but I went back and watched it recently and I had a pretty good time. Night 2 also has one of the best Money in the Bank cash-ins ever that tied into everything between Drew McIntyre, CM Punk, Damian Priest and Seth Rollins, and not only would send Damian Priest up to the main event sort of, but also absolutely kick Drew versus Punk into gear, and even Logan Paul versus Randy Orton versus Kevin Owens. Well, it ticks the sports entertainment box. Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes in the Night 2 main event as well is just absolutely perfect. Like, these are a couple of dudes as well that could have a forever feud, and the second half of it, when people just keep running in, well, that is the kind of stuff that WWE does the best. I was there live and I was having a whale of a time. That's the whole point of wrestling, we're meant to have fun. So even though it does feel like a little bit of its era show, it's just so easy to watch. I tell you, man, it is super entertaining. I stand by in this list. Number 15, the WWF King of the Ring 1993. So you did not see that one coming, and nor should you. We have to throw a few curveballs in here. And actually, as an entire show, I wouldn't say it's anything you have to write home about, but when you take Bret Hart and you put him front and center and you watch him just have the best story arc of all time, it's a bit of hyperbole, but kind of true, well, it makes this whole pay-per-view wonderful. And the whole idea here was that the WWF realized, man, we screwed up after WrestleMania 9, and we'd like the Hitman to be a star, so what do we do? And the answer was let him win the King of the Ring, and in every single match, let there be this real danger and sense of dread. Let's figure out how Bret is going to circumvent that. And the way he approaches this is just absolutely incredible, and he will make you believe that wrestling is real. I mean, the first round is him versus Razor Ramon, which has an interesting edge anyway. And after that, he fights Mr. Perfect. And you know the history between those two, and we'd have to sit down and debate it, but this one may actually be better than their classic SummerSlam match. The whole tournament vibe as well makes it feel like the most important thing ever, and in the final, he has to take on Bam Bam Bigelow, one of the best big men ever, with once again the story being, so Hart, how are you going to chop that guy down to size? He's massive. Bam Bam had also received a bye, so his HP was going to be higher. When I tell you, Bret Hart puts on such a selling masterclass, you can see fans in the crowd having a meltdown. They don't know what to do. I mean, you can totally buy that his body is broken, so when he gets the victory, this place goes unglued, and you get a post-match angle with Jerry Lawler. Listen, that program eventually was all over the place, but it was molten lava on this night. WWF pulled it off very well. So really, I'm putting this out there in case you are a brand new watcher of wrestling and you keep hearing this name Bret Hart but don't know where to start. That rhymes, so it must be true. Go watch the King of the Ring 1993 with all this in your brain. I think you will be most impressed. Number 14, WWF WrestleMania 10. So it's a two-match show. Arguably, you can say that, but if two of the matches are some of the best matches of all time, and they happened on a WrestleMania stage, well, call me old school, call me a relic, I think it has to be mentioned. Because really the truth about 1994 is that yes, if you look at the business metric, WWE was in the toilet, but actually when it came to some of the stories and when it came to some of the actual booking, well, it's not half bad. If nothing else, of course, Vince McMahon was trying to get away from the Hulkamania boom and figure out what his company was going to be. And I actually think he had found the reasoning here. The whole SummerSlam 2002 thing once again. He just didn't dive in with both feet. So the whole thing was just a little bit wibbly wobbly. The opener, of course, is Bret Hart versus Owen Hart. And to this day, people still say it could be one of the best opening matches ever. And I'm saying that too because it is. The fact that Owen Hart won as well totally blew people's brains because nobody could believe it. And Owen's motivations here to sound like an acting coach are genius because he has already decided by WrestleMania 10, Bret Hart, you have no morals, you cheat all the time, so I don't give a damn, I'm gonna cheat too. That also winds up his brother, who then throws his game plan out the window, and that's the reason he does get caught. I tell you, my friends, you have to watch it. It soon becomes a proper dirty fight too, and even though we're dealing with siblings here and professional wrestling, it never feels cheesy or corny. And of course, we bookend the narratives here. Because Owen Hart has his moment at the start of the show, and then what does Bret do at the end? He wins the WWF champion and steals the spotlight away from his younger brother, and poor Owen cannot handle it. Of course, right bang in the middle too, you also get the Razor Ramon Shawn Michaels ladder match, which absolutely changed the industry forever. And it's kind of interesting to watch now, because they do not go as crazy as somebody would in 2025. But because we have seen everything, seeing something that's a little bit more reserved, and using the ladder as a weapon of desperation to try and get the title, well, it's kind of done a 180, and now somehow it stands out even more. I mean, there is just such an intense struggle to try and win the championship that by the time Shawn Michaels does that big big splash. You're like, damn, I understand the WWF World title is the best, but this IC one is pretty good too. You'll actually also be shocked if you hang around to watch Macho Man vs. Crush, which is a decent match all things considered. And I like all of this show, I just think it works. Plus you have a super pumped up crowd, couple of thumbs. So today has been commonplace for wrestling promotions to work for each other, but I promise you, my friends, if you were around for a 20-year period when the WWE was on top, Vince McMahon didn't want to do that. We would have to go on the internet and be nerds and fantasy book. And it's also what ruined the invasion angle back in 2001, because even though McMahon had bought World Championship Wrestling, he was still told, well, we can't make WCW look strong, even though they always would have looked weak compared to the WWF, because the WWF literally bought them. Other promotions like New Japan found their own success anyway, when all of a sudden the pandemic hit. And don't forget, that was only a few months after AEW launched. And given the fact that both of these companies, I suppose, were in a little bit of peril, eventually they did shake hands. And what did we get at some point? The Forbidden Door, or a promotion versus promotion card. All of a sudden, us nerds were happy. Fans were so pumped up for this, even Clark Connors got an amazing reaction after he replaced Ishii. I don't mean that in a bad way to Clark, but most fans would be like, oh man, I can't believe we're not getting Ishii, but who cares? We're just getting somebody. This is also like when Wheeler Yuta was like, well, you're saying horrible things about me, but look how good I am as a wrestler. He even threw Chris Jericho around on this show. And I tell you, if you were just stumbled across it, you were like, well, who is this random guy throwing around Y2J? But that's what got you interested. Shota Umino also staked his claim to be the new ace of New Japan, and fair enough, that didn't really work out, but you also get Will Ospreay versus Orange Cassidy, which I think is still massively underrated. I remember a few people being like, well, why are we doing that with Will Ospreay? But Orange Cassidy, as he always does, proves to he's one of the best. It's genuinely one of my favorite matches AEW's ever done. Even the Dudes with Attitude versus the Young Bucks is a head scratcher. It's like, how did we get here? And even though I've said this one time before, I'll say it twice, it's also one of those occasions where you can start going, that's when we started to do party matches. It's also when Sting no-sells from the Young Bucks, and this place goes absolutely thunderous. And that was the whole point of the character, and more power to Tony Khan. He knew how to book Sting. The serious injury to Adam Cole obviously now hits twice as hard, and my gosh, I hope that guy's okay. And the main event of Jon Moxley versus Tanahashi just made people laugh. Jon Moxley, as he was Dean Ambrose, had left WWE because he wanted opportunities like this, and then he was going against one of the best Japanese wrestlers for the past 15 years. I mean, you couldn't write it. Yep, we did. At the time as well, Mox really did feel like the ace of AEW, so that worked as well. And yes, it was the same as Marvel versus DC or Coke versus Pepsi. And imagine if one day they made a mega drink and you drank it and went, man, that's pretty good. That's essentially what the Forbidden Door was. But even if the matches weren't for you, the whole concept and just the idea made wrestling fun again. And not that it wasn't fun in WWE. If you like to look at the whole industrial bubble, this show is just a massive tick. You could never do it again. Once you've done it once, you do it twice. Words to those effect. Number 12, ECW One Night Stand 2005 and 2006. So I don't even know how it lands these days, because these pay-per-views were made for a very specific audience. It was the Extreme Championship Wrestling crowd, who always felt like ECW had never actually been propped up on a major stage. So in 2005 and 2006, WWE actually went and did it. Once again, this year is massively important too, because WWE did not know what they were doing in 2005. And while they never would have been able to lean in this direction 100%, on this given night or two given nights, my gosh, it was refreshing. I mean, seeing cult heroes like Little Guido and Super Crazy on a WW pay-per-view was crazy, and you had Lance Storm versus Chris Jericho. You could read an entire book about their past, so we had narratives too. You also get Mysterio versus Psychosis. So if you were a WCW guy like I was, when I was a WWF guy, but I watched WCW, that's not the point here, but all of a sudden it was like you were watching the Cruiserweight division in '97. Wonderful. You also get Mike Awesome versus Tanaka, and I always wanted to find someone that didn't know what they were going to do. Like if you were invested in ECW, you knew the whole MO was let's try to kill each other, and somehow they got that signed off here too. Sabu versus Rhino was also the perfect way to allow these hardcore fans to feel like they were home again. And the only reason I throw 2006 in there as well is because RVD isn't on the 2005 show, and Rob Van Dam has to be included. And what did he do during the main event of 2006 episode? He main evented with John Cena, and he won the WWE title. Again, if you were told somebody that in 1999, they would have punched you in the face. The whole thing is just iconic these days, and you get an absolutely nuts Sabu versus Rey Mysterio match. And even that absolute schmoz between the WWE and ECW guys is crazy. And for some reason, you also get Kurt Angle versus Randy Orton. But even that is worth your time, because the ECW fans decide, well, we like Kurt, but Randy, you're a proper WWE superstar, and they're pushing him during his entrance, but you can see it on his face. I think he's totally loving it. So if you need something that just feels like an outlier to itself, I love both of these. I think they rock. Number 11, New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 13. New Japan finally was finding its feet again during this period. I know this because idiots like me were signing up to the streaming service and being like, oh my gosh, NJPW is really good. Other people were like, yes, where have you been? It's been this way for a good couple of years. It really was just this idea that if you wanted wrestling to feel like combat sports, New Japan would hook you up. Which ties into the first match, which was Will Ospreay versus Ibushi. And as we know, both of these guys would go on to suffer really horrible injuries, but here they were holding nothing back, and it actually made people go, as they were watching it live, well, how the flub is anybody going to follow it? But it turned out the roster had gone, we don't care what anybody else is going to do, we're going to go out there and kill it too. I mean, Ishii and Zack Sabre Jr. didn't care, and they just meshed their styles to have a technical hard-hitting war. And this was also when the tag team scene was ridiculous, because you get Evil and Sonata versus the Young Bucks versus the Gorilla of Destiny. And look, I'm not trying to throw bones here, but the tag team scene in WWE wasn't great, so when you watch this, well, it blew your mind. The fact you also get Ishimori versus Kushida and Cody Rhodes versus Juice Robinson too, well, again, from a modern day perspective, it's nuts, but also it's just so varied, you get a little bit of everything. It's also the night too where Okada apparently refound himself after some sad times as he did take on Jay White, and also the Rainmaker gets a pop just by wearing trunks as opposed to the tights he had been putting on. So don't you tell me New Japan don't tell stories. It's also just a wonderful ruse and all the power to Gedo who booked this, because Okada still loses. So the whole time you were being told through semantics, I suppose, Jay White's gonna lose, Jay White's gonna lose, and then he wins. Honestly, it just felt so exciting, nobody thought we were gonna do it. Chris Jericho also has a brutal fight with Naito, and my God, does he rock back the years. This is no disqualification, and they lean into that and then some. And I watched this the other day before doing this list. Some of the spots are actually nasty. The main event was also Kenny Omega versus Tanahashi, which also felt like a massive passing of the torch moment. And once again, the narrative was just great. Tanahashi was the legend telling Kenny, your style is ruining wrestling, whereas Omega was telling Tanahashi, well, your style is passé, my friend, when they just brought all this stuff into the ring, and all of a sudden, both guys had been elevated. This is a terrific show. Number 10, AEW Full Gear 2021. So once again, it's not one of those pay-per-views you have to watch from minute 1 to minute end. I mean, the Dan Lambert stuff is nowadays just a little bit weird. Like, he played his character well, but some of the promos we did, well, I'm not 100% sure it was kosher. Otherwise, though, Cody Rhodes and Pac taking on Malachi Black and Andrade is like writing a thesis about what they would go on to do after this, especially in WWE. And the Super Click versus the Jurassic Express is probably about as crazy as you can get from a 6-man tag. All you need to do is sit back and grab some popcorn, and you're gonna have a good time. Jungle Boy basically becomes the man at the end of this and probably morphs into Jack Perry, but you also get Darby Allin versus MJF on this show. And again, we are going back a long while, so both these guys are trying to represent themselves here and concrete themselves in All Elite Wrestling, and they just tell such a polarizing story in the sense MJF was very specific, and Darby Allin was at the end of the scale, but then they just meshed together. And it's the match that ends with a headlock takeover after MJF had cheated. So if you weren't sure you had to hate him before, now you know. It also felt like Maxwell and Darby wanted to remind people they were still here, because on the pay-per-view before this, both Adam Cole and Bryanson had debuted, and Adam Cole totally shines in that match we've already talked about with the Young Bucks. And here, Bryan Danielson takes on Miro, and I couldn't have been happier. It's also the night where CM Punk and Eddie Kingston threw fists, and honestly, everything from the promos to the build to the match itself. I think it's my biggest disappointment that CM Punk did leave AEW. This should have been one of those forever feuds, like they barely do anything, and yet it's the best thing ever. They have this odd chemistry, even though I think in real life they may actually hate each other. The main event is totally awesome too, because Hangman Adam Page, the main character of AEW, finally topples Kenny Omega in a story that had basically been 18 months in the making. We've talked about this on other entries on this list. It was also the good guy getting the victory so we could go home happy. You have no idea how important that is sometimes. AEW tick the box. Number 9, AEW All In 2024. So you could probably switch to 2025. It's all going to be much of a muchness. And I do have to say I'm a little biased towards this one, because this board a-hole got to sit in the front row. And if you are in the front row and you see that amazing match between Bryan Danielson and Swerve Strickland and the incredible moment when Bryan does win, but it's kind of hard to turn those emotions off. And sure, there are matches like Britt Baker versus Mercedes Moné that didn't really hit the level we were expecting. What I tell you to do today, or maybe you haven't seen it, is go and watch Swerve versus Bryan with all the ideas in your head about where we were going to go over the next year. That match has got better, man. And when Danielson hits his running knee and Strickland just brushes it off, I don't think there's ever been anybody cooler. The American Dragon is also like a man possessed in this match, and it is one of the best outings he's ever done. Maybe because he knew deep down his Tootsie Toes, his career, or at least half his career, was about to come to an end. But it is just everything at the end with his family and his kids. That's pro wrestling. The undercard backs it up too, because FTR versus the Young Bucks versus the Acclaim was always going to be a good time. And Jericho versus Hook is over so fast, it actually shakes up the card, and it's something we talk about all the time. Not every single match needs to be 20 minutes. You need the shot of adrenaline. Jack Perry versus Darby Allin is also fun, even if they did get their time cut short. But to the end of this, Sting comes out to make the save, and he comes out to Metallica. Look into my eyes, my friends, there is nothing better than that. The four-way ladder match is absolutely awesome as well, apart from one hilarious tiny ladder, and you get Toni Storm versus Mariah May on this card. I don't actually think you need to say anything more than that. It's one of the best feuds AEW's ever done. You also get the very patriotic MJF taking on Will Ospreay, and I actually think this could be more seismic as we do move down the road, because I think in early 2026 we're going to go back to this feud, and this match is going to be talked about, and even if you just watch it of the context of All In, my gosh, they work well together. There's also the Casino Gauntlet, which for me is the best stipulation that AEW does have. And seeing Zack Sabre Jr. in this, the debut of Ricochet, and the return of Nigel McGuinness, well, just listen to the fans. And you get Bryan coming out to the final countdown. This is an incredible show. I was privileged to be there. Number 8, WWE Money in the Bank 2011. So let's say that it is a one-match show. That's what a lot of people will be shouting out loud right now. It is the iconic encounter between CM Punk and John Cena, where not only does Punk win the WWE title, but he quits WWE and waves goodbye to Vince McMahon, and in doing so, turned a lot of people back onto wrestling. So yeah, you can hate the rest of this card. This thing is all time. I mean, there was just so much to dive in here, and the fact it goes down in Chicago too. I suppose the only thing is missing is that Punk isn't coming out to Cult of Personality just yet, but the way these Chicagans, is that a word I don't know, react to this man, I mean, you'd think he's flipping Santa Claus. I mean, it's so well staged, it's almost ridiculous, and it goes 30 minutes, man, but I tell you, it feels like about 2 seconds. When you do see Punk hit the GTS as well and pin John Cena, this place goes wild, and it makes you feel something. I know I keep repeating myself, but even though it is 14 years old, you can still go back to this, and it hits in the same way. You're probably never going to be able to replicate it again. Now, actually, there is more to this, and it is actually disparaging to not talk about it, because it's also the night where you get Randy Orton versus Christian for the World Heavyweight Championship, and that stupid stipulation that if Randy got disqualified, he would lose the title. So that's Christian's whole game plan. Orton does kick him in the balls, which makes Christian the guy, and I get it, that sounds terrible on paper. Go and watch it. These two are so good together, they don't just make it work, it's genuinely good. Both Money in the Bank ladder matches too are exactly what they need to be. And sure, you can skip like Mark Henry versus The Big Show, but Mark Henry versus The Big Show is also 6 minutes long. I ain't gonna get my bee in a bonnet about that. Number 7, WCW Great American Bash 1989. So some people right now will tell you this is the best Big Show of the 1980s, and two people that would most definitely agree would be Terry Funk and Ric Flair, because man, they walked to the ring and will arguably have one of the greatest matches in wrestling history. Because for example, if you do watch wrestling right now and you think it's too well presented, it lacks a gritty edge, go and put this on right now. Within 5 minutes, you're like, wait a minute, was wrestling different in 1989? Because I think these two people want to kill each other. It's also just so great because it was sold as this and you actually got it, so it did live up to the expectation. And it also feels like nothing is planned, like there's no choreography at all. They just punch and kick and try to murder each other. That's why it's brilliant. Actually, to be fair, the War Games entry that does go down on this night isn't an all-timer, but it is okay. And it kind of goes back to what we just said about Money in the Bank. It's War Games, man. It can only be so bad. You also get Steve Williams and Terry Gordy in there, who were the masters of brawling. This kind of goes back to Terry Funk and Ric Flair. Just watch these two the whole time. You'd be like, wait a minute, I thought this was meant to be predetermined. Sting versus the Great Muta is ahead of its time in many ways, because they move at a frantic pace, and it reminds you why Sting was ahead of the game. And man, Sting versus Ricky Steamboat is just a great good guy, bad guy match. I mean, Ricky Steamboat could work with anybody, but Lex Luger gets a bad rap these days. He knew what he was doing. The Steiners will also scare you half to death because honestly, they go out there with murder in their eyes. And admittedly, you can kind of ignore the rest of the card, but everything that has come out of my mouth is probably in the all-time level, especially Terry Funk versus Ric Flair. In fact, it's a match that every single wrestling fan should see, and it still holds up today. Number 6, New Japan Dominion 2018. So the headliner has been called by many people and some intellectual folk too as the best wrestling match to ever take place. Not in the modern day, not in the olden day, ever. So if we don't include that pay-per-view in here, well, we're probably doing it a disservice. It really is something to behold as well because Kenny Omega and Okada go 64 minutes and 50 seconds, and yet it never feels boring, it never feels dull, and somehow they always have something to do. I still ask myself this question, how did they fill the time? New Japan had also billed this match as the most informed wrestler in the world against the greatest wrestling champion in the world, and if you buy into that, there ain't no going back. And that really was the story throughout. This was the 4th time they met, so what was going to happen? And even though they do half this match going 600 miles per hour, eventually Okada smacks Kenny Omega right in the ribs, and then he has to start to sell. Honestly, you will feel fear for this man. Kenny Omega is one of the best of the generation. Let's face it, Okada is too. I mean, just watching him fight from underneath for the last 15 minutes will totally screw with your brain, because you'll be like, am I watching the same match? And how the flub did they change it so fast? It also has a 2 out of 3 fall stipulation, which just heightens it even more. And when Kenny Omega does become the IWGP champion, I wouldn't even care if you told me you cried, water coming out of your seeing devices. I would totally get it. This thing is just special, it's unreal, it's like nothing else. The best part is, because of this, many forget there's also a clash between Will Ospreay and Takahashi on this show. And when I say those names, you know exactly what you are going to get, but who does it better than those two? The Young Bucks are also totally on form as well as they go back at it again one time with Evil and Sanada. This is another one of those examples when you can go, my gosh, Matt and Nick Jackson can work with anyone, and their style is totally innovative. You also get another wild brawl between Chris Jericho and Naito, and just establish how good Jericho was in 2018, who's also having the time of his life, and I just said that year, 2018. Nothing felt bigger than New Japan, and it was crowned thanks to this Kenny Omega and Okada feud. I mean, it's brilliant, man. It just is. Maybe I'm wrong, that's how I feel. Number 5, AEW Revolution 2024. The retirement of Sting is probably the best wrestling retirement of all time. If anybody else is going to retire a legend, you should all ring up Tony Khan and say, hello, Tony, can you tell me how you do it? Then just totally rip him off because you can't do any better. I mean, I was blubbing like a baby after this because seeing Sting team with his fake son of Darby Allin and take on the Young Bucks in the most insane match you've ever seen in your life as Darby Allin does go through glass, well, it does something to you, man, and let's not forget the traditions of the business. If you are about to go out, you're meant to lose. Every single fan said the same thing. If Sting doesn't go away with that tag team title, I'm gonna be mad. Even Steve Borden was saying I should lose. The rest were going, no, you're not losing. It was totally the right decision to make sure he did do this. And seeing him stood there with some gold as confetti came down from the ceiling, tell you, I'll never forget it. I don't care how stupid it sounds. You also get a wonderful 180 because Will Ospreay versus Takeshita is on this show, so you get the most modern wrestling match ever. And that is backed up by Eddie Kingston versus Bryan Danielson, which is just a horrendous brawl. And yet another one of these matches where you look around, you're going, how is the former Daniel Bryan taking on Eddie Kingston? It is absolutely fantastic. FTR versus the Blackpool Combat Club 2 is just a war of death, and they get so nasty towards the end. And you get Christian versus Daniel Garcia and Roderick Strong versus Orange Cassidy, and they are just good matches. Samoa Joe versus Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland also happens on this card, and why the hell does nobody talk about that today? I mean, not only is it a legend in Samoa Joe, but it's 2 of the best wrestlers doing it right now. So it is just an absolutely stupid card that really sells you AEW in what, a 7-hour show? I mean, it is too long, but I don't want to keep going on about that. Still make it work. Number 4, WrestleMania 39. Now, so many people are shouting at the screen, oh, you can't give this to WrestleMania 39. So here is my own personal challenge. Go watch night 1, go watch night 2. Remember that we know Cody Rhodes goes on to win at WrestleMania 40, and this weekender is flubbing brilliant. I mean, it's just so well put together, it will still be watchable in 10 years' time, and sure, yes, let's talk about it. Nobody could believe that Cody did lose. I remember the guy behind me threw his very expensive cheeseburger on the floor. And if he hadn't won it 12 months later, then yeah, it wouldn't have been a good. But he did win it 12 months later. So it's like those idiots that go, this Batman game wouldn't be very good if Batman wasn't in it. He's in it. It also goes to show that wrestling can pull out real emotion, even if it's a tragic one. I've already talked about it, I'll talk about it again. Cody and Roman are just so good together. It's a forever feud, man. And even as I stand here in July 2025, I really hope it's not done. Otherwise, yes, you do get the tag team belts main eventing on night one, which is totally crazy. And it's Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn taking it off the Usos. And I don't actually have any words to say about it. It's just perfect. It's 5 stars, 6.25 stars in the Tokyo Dome. Even when I rewatch it, I wouldn't change it. It rules. Do not forget that IC title match as well, which actually did get 5 stars in some publications. Sheamus versus Drew McIntyre versus Gunther. Not only did it help the belt as we continue to resurrect it, but it's genuinely one of the best matches that's ever happened at WrestleMania. And because we have so many good belts these days, people don't talk about it. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley also enter this conversation because they may have had the best WWE women's match in history. And Dominic Mysterio versus Rey Mysterio could be the most entertaining thing that has ever been born onto this world. I mean, the condoms entrance alone, no notes. And yes, sure, Edge versus Finn Balor has the wrong finish, but at least we got to see that match to begin with. And you get Bianca Belair versus Asuka. And you know the deal. Bianca Belair versus Asuka could never be bad. They could have wrestled in 1772, would have worked. Even when the negative Nancy's tried to ruin this show, somehow it all worked out for the best. I mean, nobody wants to see Shane McMahon pull his quad in an impromptu match with The Miz, but Snoop Dogg steps in, hits the worst wrestling moves you've ever seen, but my gosh, did I have a good time. And he beats The Miz too. Don't tell me it's not entertaining. So that part is utterly insane, but honestly, before you do criticize me, just go check out a little bit. There's a terrific all-timer of a WrestleMania. Number 3, All Out 2021. So we've already hinted about it, but let's just talk about it in depth. This is the night that Adam Cole debuted, and 5 minutes later, Bryan Danielson debuted too. It was insane then, it was insane now. It was like something you would have pitched on Reddit, but the fact that Tony Khan had the balls to do this, even though he could have separated them over months, well, now we can look back and say, damn it, Tone, you did it. You created something that will be special for life. He also did that twice on this evening, because it's also the day that CM Punk returned to the ring and just had such an exceptional wrestling match with Darby Allin. I mean, Punk basically reminded you it's not really about how old you are, how young you are, or even how athletic you are. If you have the right brain, you know how to tell stories, we can do it until the cows come home. Even seeing CM Punk in the ring just makes you go, how is this happening? Because I never thought it was going to happen. And yes, you get the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks in that AEW Tag Team Title Cage match. I don't have enough words to say about that. It somehow goes from super violent as people put thumbtacks in their sneakers to making you cry as you see Phoenix and Penta try and help each other because they are brothers. And by the time they win those championships, well, you'll be on the floor. I mean, it's one of the best cage matches, one of the best tag team matches, one of the best brother matches. Again, just goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, arguably the tag team belts never felt more important than this, and even MJF and Chris Jericho has so much story, so you can dive into that. And in terms of Britt Baker versus Chris Statlander, well, at the time, it was probably the best match of both of their careers. The main event of Kenny Omega versus Christian is also wonderful because one, if you're a Christian fan like me, you're like, finally, he's being treated in the way that he should do. And two, it's just really well done. It's also a dream encounter in many ways. You've got Christian, who we mostly knew from WWE and a little bit of TNA, taking on independent warrior Kenny Omega. Thank flubbins for AEW. Obviously, Kenny Omega won before we did get an influx of new talent to kickstart a proper war. In many ways, this is the best show that AEW has ever done. Number 2, WrestleMania 17. So yes, nostalgia is a powerful tool, and I think in many ways, WrestleMania 17 will top most people's lists because of that. And to me, it's still an absolute banger. I know other people in the What Culture offices wanted this in a different number, but not this bored a-hole. I just think it's too good. I just think it's too important. But even if you do think it's aged, all I would tell you to do is go watch that Limp Bizkit promo package between The Rock and Steve Austin and check out their promos too. I know it ends somewhat badly and it says we have a Steve Austin heel turn, but you don't have to watch the Raws after this WrestleMania. You can just stick to the match, and who did it better than The Rock and Steve? I mean, this really is classic stuff. It's actually depressing to say, but it did happen in 2001. I think what really matters the most is that it just does feel special, and many people say that WrestleMania 17 is the proper end to the Attitude Era, so that gives it significance too. Honestly, I still find time to watch it every year, because I'm a geek. It goes further than this as well, because of course you also get TLC 2, as the Hardys, the Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian basically ruined wrestling for the rest of time, because nobody could ever reach the heights they set here. And the Jeff Hardy Edge Spear still lives rent-free in my brain. And even Adam Copeland himself has said I probably would have dialed all that down. It was responsible for my first retirement. And yeah, this thing is absolutely brutal. Like a car wreck. And yes, I do have to say I find it hard to watch Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle for obvious reasons. But you can't deny how technically amazing that is. And even Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon is totally off the chain. And you may not believe me, but you can see it for yourself. When Linda McMahon gets off her wheelchair, she gets the biggest pop of the night. Look at my face, I'm not joking. So we must have done something right. Even Raven versus The Big Show versus Kane somehow managed to be super dumb but fun. And you get the gimmick battle royal. Now in many ways this is awful, but it's awful in the best possible way. And it is the last known appearance of the Repo Man. So damn it means something to me. I'm also slightly exaggerating, but there is an element of truth to it too. It still feels, even to this day, that WrestleMania 17 is the foundation that all pay-per-views have been built on. That's how important it is. And even if we do this list another 10 years' time, at the very least it'll be top 3. It is the best. Number 1, AEW Dynamite, a tribute to Brody Lee. So yes, while it did happen on the Wednesday night slot when AEW Dynamite was meant to air, the Brody Lee tribute show is just one of the most emotional and best things you're ever gonna see in your life. The best way it was ever described to me is masterful TV that you wish you never had to see. Genuinely, I can't sum it up better than that. Even the subtitle gets you, because AEW did dub it a celebration of life. Every single wrestler that walks to that ring just wants to give the most ultimate performance they possibly could physically give. I mean, nothing else would have been right anyway, but the fact that every single match was built around what Brody Lee had done in AEW, well, that just gets you in the tum-tum too. When you get the Dark Order and Lance Archer taking on Eddie Kingston, the Butcher and the Blade, and Evil Uno and Eddie Kingston hit just let all of their emotions out, even the way they're hitting each other. I know it sounds stupid and a bit over the top, but you really can feel how they're feeling. Brody's Dark Order stablemates win this match too, with the meta story being they finally made their mentor proud. And that was just the narrative of this entire show, and the amount of Easter eggs too. Like at one point, Britt Baker looks at the camera and says, "Big Rig, if you know, you know." By the time Eric Redbeard makes his cameo, there just is not one dry eye in the house. And even if you are able to get through that, seeing Brody Jr., Brody's oldest son, come to the ring and just get revenge on MJF, you'll be on the floor. I tell you, you'll be an utter mess. I mean, he hits Max with a kendo stick after Maxwell has stolen his mask, and the look on Brody Jr.'s face. I understand I sound a bit silly here, but not only is that what wrestling is about, but in many ways it's what life is about too. So the idea totally works. It feels like a celebration, although one that we're having just way too early. Let's just tie it back to everything we've said. Wrestling is about emotion. Yes, even if sometimes that emotion is the sad stuff, I'm not entirely sure how anybody could ever do better than this. And rest in peace, Brody Lee, who was taken way too soon. My gosh, what an absolute hero. Now, of course, we're gonna miss some shows, so make sure you drop them in the comments below, and we'll try and re-update this list every couple of years. And if you like the video, share the video and subscribe. Click the video on the screen for another long list from me, so we can just get into a very polite argument. Otherwise, my friends, have a terrific day. I'll see you soon.